Well, good day and welcome to my fly shop. Today we're going to do just a brief little chat here about flies and fly boxes. I would say a lot of problems I see with some anglers I run across. You look at their fly box, it'll show you something. They've got what I would consider a box full of nothing. They've got one of every kind of fly. They'll go into shops or whatever and they'll buy one of these and one of those or whatever. So the trouble is with that is, you find the right fly that the fish are eating that day, and then you break the fly off and you get this silly look on your face because you're out. So in my opinion, if a fly is worth fishing, you do your research, you could try to get your patterns down to where you're going, kind of simplify it if you will, and have at least 6 to a dozen flies in your box. You might want, a couple sizes of a pattern, for example, but make sure you got at least 6, 4 or 6 or something like that. So when you break a fly off, you've got something to fall back on. We spend a lot of time and money getting up and down the road waiting for these fishing trips sometimes, or wait all year to go on vacation. And I'm just trying to tell you some really important tips here that you don't want to scrimp on, and that have the right flies, make sure you got enough of them, and make sure you got some good tippet material. I notice that is another thing that I would say that some anglers kind of cheap out on, if you will. Like I fish a lot of fluorocarbon tippets, and I know they're expensive, but that's the connection between you and that fish, and that you want it strong and something that's not that visible. So the fluorocarbon breaks down the rays. It's not very visible to the fish, nearly invisible. You're going to get it all different diameters, right from big fish on up to little dry flies if you like. And even on little dry flies, I'll use some, fine 5 or 6X tippet with fluorocarbon at the end. It'll sink in the water a little bit, but that's okay. They won't see it on the top breaking the surface film either. So another option or an advantage of the fluorocarbon was I can use a little heavier tippet on flies typically than you would instead of, say, fishing a 3 or 4X tippet in some cases, so don't have the fish that are going to spook away from anything heavier. With a typical tippet, go to a fluorocarbon and you can maybe fish a 2X, for example. You can just get a little more breaking strength between you and the fish, and not saying that you're going to be horsing the fish, but they're not going to. Some of these big trout, when they throw a head shake at you, they'll separate you from a fly real quick. So that'll just kind of lean things in your favor a little bit. So what I would do with getting ready for, so here's a little box that I would take to streams. I hope you can see that kind of there. It's got my little bead heads I can get down. I can high stick that. I can, if I'm wanting indicator fish or whatever, or just, high stick or the Euro nymph or whatever they want to call it these days. These are some nice little flies that work very well in New Zealand. I sent guys those patterns that really work well, and if they work there, they'll work anywhere. Those fish are very, very skittish. Here's some nice little bead heads. So that's that's a box I just throw in for small streams or rivers or whatever. That is ready to go. But look, they're all lined up and organized. I've got lots of bullets in my chamber here for my trip. And then when you get back, you fill the holes. Make sure you just keep your boxes filled up. There's another one here, dry fly box. When you're hitting, some dry fly areas with cutthroats or whatever you're fishing, rainbows, whatever it may be. So you do the research on the area you're kind of going. You're going to know the patterns that you need. Get them more specific and boxed up for your destination. And a lot of them are generic flies too. And here's another kind of box, just an open plastic box here. These are just, cheapies, but they work quite well. I've got some big dry flies in here for one lake that I fish with big sedges in particular, and I'll take them over in another area where they have the big sedges. This is all ready to go. So that's a good way, and you don't have to spend a ton of money on bins for that. And then here's some, big attractor flies, big foamies. But you can see that they're all lined up. I know the flies that I like to use, and there's no use. You can't throw 50, 60 flies when you're out. You need to knock it down to about 5 or 6 your go-to patterns that you got a lot of confidence in. Here I'm getting a little thin. I'm going to have to top this box up here, but these little flies here, I know I've caught trout anywhere with these, and so that's a kind of a go-to deal with flies. So, and then we get into the big bins and so forth, the big streamers and so on. So it's just trying to simplify it a little bit, if that helps you out at all.
Thanks for watching Brent's fly fishing instructional series. He can be found on Brent's YouTube channel and Sport Fishing on the Fly.